I also have a big TV up here that I could drop on somebody. It's a weapon
project.
right there.
Don't laugh, Derek. I had that happen in my classroom one time. We had this
Oh, really?
big one and it just fell off the wall. It didn't hit me,
Oh.
luckily. Just
Yikes.
missed me. I would have been even shorter then.
Oh,
Take one that has like the computer part too.
Wow.
There was nothing like being a 90s kid, though, and seeing the big TV on. Mm.
oh yeah, the old console TV. Go back before the 90s, you know, in the cabinet.
That's right.
That was the best. With the radio and
the rabbit
TV
ear
in the cabinet.
antennas.
Yep. Yep. That was my job. Go hold the antenna.
Rabbit ears.
I remember no TV.
So
I'm talking about it in the classroom.
So I sent somebody a meme the other day that said, how to frighten the new generation. Put them in a room with a rotary phone, an analog watch, and a TV with no remote, then leave directions in cursive.
That's
Could
great.
you imagine? Oh my goodness.
Look at Kate. She's inside one of those TVs.
In honor of that, I'm going inside of the TV for the session.
That's funny.
Oh, perfect.
That is great. That is great. Oh my gosh.
You're quick. All right, in the chat,
right.
everybody, we've got a link to a document that I know that Kathy and I have put some stuff on, and you can take and maybe put some notes down from what Selena's going to share as well. I just sent this out to them last night and said, hey, throw some stuff on here, you know, for everybody to kind of help direct our thoughts as we go through the session. You know, it's going to be quick. We don't have anything set for a half hour, like, okay, we got to get it moving along at this time and this point. So it really can be question driven for what you guys have. We've all gone through and done this virtually. If you've done it virtually, you can feel free to share and be our guest presenter too. You know, and we want to share our successes, our failures, and kind of what we learned along the way and how we might change things and how things are changing, you know, since we did it in the spring. So we thought we'd have Kathy begin, since Arizona was, I think, kind of a front runner in this, and definitely pushed me to have the, you know, the guts to try it and pull it off as well. And without the help that I got from our friends in Arizona, I couldn't have been able to pull it off. And I'm sure Selena, you know, has similar, you know, things to say. So
I wouldn't have even tried. I wouldn't have tried if they hadn't led the way.
Yay. Okay.
There we go. There we go. So let's have Kathy begin. And, you know, we're just going to kind of let you guys unmute yourself. And if you've got a question, feel free to, you know, interject and ask it. You know, Selena and I are going to jump kind of all over each other as well as Kathy speaking. So, but we'll let Kathy begin.
Okay, great. So thank you guys so much. For those of you that I have not met, my name is Kathy Pondy, and I started with the Arizona Council in January after retiring from Arizona Public School Education, and then we went remote in March, and so it was just crazy. And so Teresa is my colleague. You guys probably know Teresa, and then Elena is our CEO and president, and we went remote about 3 weeks before our Econ Challenge and Personal Finance Challenge were scheduled. And Elena said, we're gonna do it. And we're like, so we ran into the fire. So I'm gonna give you kind of the overview. The biggest piece for us was the Personal Finance Challenge. The Econ Challenge, we did do online via SurveyMonkey. So I created the tests, the 3 different divisions, high school and junior high. The Econ Challenge students, we communicated with the teachers immediately. So the Econ Challenge students came into a Zoom main room, and then they were given the link to the test that was appropriate for them, and they took it while we watched them, basically. So they had their cameras on and they had their mics on. So the Personal Finance Challenge was a little bit more complicated. So in person, the students are given the case study when they come to the facility where we hold it. And they're broken into all these different rooms on Mesa Community College's campus. So we basically said, how can we do this but online? So we used Zoom. The students, and in the documents that Derek has put together in the Google Doc, that I have put enough things there that you can see our schedule that we use that day for Zoom, the agenda for the entire day. So the teachers were not invited to the Zoom. There was no teachers. They guided their kids to register for our Zoom meeting and what was going to happen that day. But the students had a scheduled time that they had to come into the Zoom event. And so we had 7 different sessions and 7 breakout rooms. So when the students came to our event, we brought them into a main room. We gave them some overview of what was going to happen. And then they were sent into the breakout room that they were assigned to. And they had time to prep their presentation. Then they were moved to the judging room. So we did a lot of movement. We moved them to the judging room. And if you see the schedule on there, and this is the document that says Personal Finance Challenge Overview, will show you an example of our schedule that we used. So when the students then moved into a judging room for a 10-minute presentation and a 5-minute judging period, then they were exited out of the event. So for both of those 2 events, Personal Finance and Econ Challenge, we then did the scoring, and by the end of the day, we announced our finalists for Econ Challenge, and we did the quiz bowl via Zoom and Facebook Live. So I have a document there that shows you what site we used, and we brought, Debbie Henney was our moderator. She shared her screen so we could see the scoring live, and then we could see the gallery view of the teams that were participating. So that's a very quick overview. A few things I will add that couldn't have done this without a good sized staff. I mean, not good size, but we had all 5 of us. We had 5 of us, so each one of us had a role. So we had our Personal Finance Challenge I was in charge of, but I also had a staff member that was a co-host helping me bring people in from the waiting room into the main room and then moving them. So I didn't do that. I was the facilitator. I gave them instruction. I was, we had troubleshooting. So enough people where you're not trying to do too many jobs at one time made it really smooth. Enough judges. So we had, like I said, we had 7 breakout rooms and the judges never moved. We put them in their judging breakout room and they had their schedule and kids rotated in and out of their judging room. So we had plenty of judges for that. So we couldn't have done it without that. And then I have an agenda in that file that also shows how long we had it. So it was from, I think the first check-in time was like 8:45 through the afternoon, right? So the kids may be done, if they came in at 8:45, they may be done by like 10 a.m. Then if they were required to come back for the finals, they just knew that they were hanging out that day and that they were available. And this was the very beginning of COVID, so they really weren't going anywhere. So then we also made sure we gave them, we had 2 other things I'll say, and then Derek and Selena. We practiced a lot. We got our format and our process really specific. And then we had a training for teachers and a training for the judges that really just was on Zoom. So they felt comfortable with what was going to happen that day. And that I think was essential as well, so that they were prepared to know that what their kids would experience. So Derek or Selena, you want to add to that?
I'll let Selena go.
Yes, so I will add to it. And thank you, Kathy and group, because they shared all of their documents with me, so I didn't have to recreate the wheel. So I won't repeat anything that she said. I will just reiterate that we did do a testing round. Then we did ours on separate days, whereas they did all of theirs on one day. I could not manage that amount of chaos. And I didn't have quite as much help because I did have Allie and Jessica who were helping me as they could, but I was really doing all of the moving and stuff and facilitating and all of that stuff. So there was no way I could do them both on the same day. And so I didn't really even practice. So she said they practiced a lot. Like I was just going by the seat of my pants, which is how I do things a lot of times. I thought maybe I would talk about the problems that we had, things that didn't work the way that we thought they would. And the first one was we were going Facebook Live as well for our quiz bowl round, the final round. And when we were doing, I can't remember which, I think I did the finance challenge earlier and then Econ challenge later in the month. But I went to go Facebook Live for the final round, and there is an integration that's built into Zoom that helps you just show what you're doing on Facebook Live, and it decided not to work that morning. And so I'm kind of scrambling and trying to figure things out. Well, thank goodness I had a tripod here at my house, and so I just put my phone on the tripod and shot it at my computer screen and went Facebook Live like that. It wasn't ideal, but mom and dad and grandparents who were trying to watch their kids could still do that. So I didn't have that problem again, but I always had my tripod close at hand so that I could put my phone up if I needed to.
Selena, can I just interrupt you for
Yeah.
1 second and say, along with that Facebook Live integration, one of the issues that I had, because I didn't get a chance to practice it like Arizona did, is, there's a setting where when you're sharing your screen, whether or not you're seeing like the gallery view or just the person talking. And that was one of them. That was kind of my mistake where I just, you could always see the person talking, but you weren't able to see the gallery view, which I think would have been a little bit better look at different times during it. So it's sometimes those little tidbits of information like that are helpful. And that was also before we all became, we got doctorates in Zoom.
Yeah, exactly.
So sorry, Selena, I just wanted to interrupt.
That's okay. No, that's perfect. The other issue I had the first time was there was a little piece that caused me trouble with moving students from the main group into their breakout rooms and then back to where I wanted them. I had that problem, and so what I ended up doing was just telling the kids when I couldn't move them around, I would just tell them log out and come back in, and that'll bring you into that main room. So there usually is a way to work around your issues, but it's just a little unsettling when you have all of these people depending on you.
I'll add something, and the co-host role is important. So if you don't use Zoom and you maybe use Teams or something, and Zoom really did work well for this, but we really needed to learn what can the host do, what can co-host do. So we co-host for each of the breakout rooms I told you the kids went to prep. We had additional volunteers that monitored that. So like I recruited my daughter, and we recruited some other people that they then could bounce just between 2 breakout rooms. So we just had an army of volunteers that make this really smooth, so that the kids had questions. They didn't have to come back to the main room. It didn't take away from their time, because we really were concerned about keeping our time schedule because it was so minute to minute. We had very few kids actually pop out, but we did give them instruction that if the technology failed and they bounced out, that their team should just keep going, and we would just put them right back where they bounced out from. So thanks, Selena. I just wanted to add that part about the co-hosts.
Kathy, did you mention the GroupMe app? Did you already mention that?
So no, I didn't. You want to say something about that?
Why don't you? So once again, this was something that they used in Arizona. So in addition to having all of the activity on Zoom, there was a GroupMe app that all of the teachers were in.
Remind Me is what we used.
Remind Me, sorry. And we used that too. I must have used GroupMe for something else. And anyway, so that's how we would communicate with the teachers and the volunteers during the day. We had 2 separate groups. And so it allowed us to text out messages to them to get them where we needed them to be, or if the teachers needed to communicate with the students. I did allow teachers in the Zoom. And so they couldn't really, they were supposed to be quiet, and they were, but I thought it would be cool for them to be able to see what was going on. So we did allow them in, and then we even allowed them in, even though they could have watched the quiz bowl round on Facebook Live, we let them come in to the quiz bowl as well, which was a good thing since I had that Facebook Live issue.
Yeah, there was a question from Chris, I think I want to answer about how do we know? So whether you let the teachers in or not, you probably have all different reasons and for why. We just thought it was so many people that having that additional teachers would be a challenge for us. So the kids had to pre-register for the Zoom, and we gave the teachers directions and they walked the kids through that when they pre-registered, they had to include, first name, last name, and their school name, I believe, was with their last name. So then Jen Mazzillo, who many of you may know, before we let them into the main room, we would rename them if they weren't right, so that we knew. And we would have, we had rounds. So there might be, during the first round, there might be 6 teams coming in. So really there was no more than about 20, 25 kids at one time. And then once we moved them, we staggered the next group arriving. So, I mean, it was monumental, but with our staff and our practice. But Chris, that's what we did, is we had them register for the Zoom event with their first name, last name, and their school. And then we had the record of what their assigned time was.
And that's extremely important when you're moving kids around. And actually, Kathy, I don't know if y'all did this. We had the school name first, and then
we may have.
I think you did, because I really followed y'all exactly. Now, even though we sent out instructions on how to do that, there were so many of them when they registered didn't follow instructions. So I spent more time than I should have emailing the teachers and saying, I am deleting your teams from the Zoom account, and you're going to have to get them to go back in and re-register. So you can change it for them, but if they get kicked off and then come back in, it defaults to how they registered themselves. So, just be prepared for that. Even the teachers can't follow instructions. Because the first time I let the kids do it and they didn't follow instructions. So the next time I told the teachers, y'all register your kids, and they didn't follow instructions.
Right. So I can include the instructions for registering for Zoom in that doc, just so you guys can see how we did do that, because that was important to getting them to the right breakout room and sticking close to our schedule.
Yeah.
And not only, Kathy, don't forget, not only did we have to have them identify their school, we also had to have them identify their team name so that we could put them in the right prep room with their team and move them around according to their team name, because some schools had more than one team.
Yes. Thank you, Teresa. Yep. And I'll put that direction, and you can see our schedule and how that matched.
So this isn't surprising, but a benefit, as we go forward, we do know that the national competitions this next year will be virtual again. And so even if we can do things live this spring, I'm thinking I want my kids to be as prepared as possible for what they'll experience when they get to the national competition. So it's possible that even if we can do live events, that I will still do ours virtually this next year. And it allows you, this is not rocket science, but it allows you to engage adult volunteers that might not be able to come otherwise. When we had somebody from the Federal Reserve Bank in New Orleans who spoke to the kids as part of the Econ challenge, and all of the economists from around the state that we partner with were able to be there to help judge the critical thinking round for the Econ challenge. And so that's a really nice plus. And the schools didn't have to travel.
Absolutely.
Now, I did have multiple teams on both challenges. Things were so crazy, and people weren't really anticipating all of this back in 2020. I had teams that didn't have the technology to join, but I had told all of the teachers, I said, if technology is an issue for you, you let me know and I will fix it for you. Like, I will come up with a solution, because we have tablets that I could have mailed out. I still would have had to have figured out what to do about the Wi-Fi access, but I didn't have anybody. I had people tell me after the fact that they couldn't do it because of technology, but nobody that asked me for help on the front end. Now moving.
I'll agree with that. And we had, our registration was well before we knew we'd have to go online. And so our very first step was to ask the teachers if we do this, will you still do it? Because we knew it would be a lot of work. And we did have, I would say it's about 75%. You know, I can't firmly say that, but so we did have some that just said, no, my kids don't have devices yet. Their parents, we just too quick. The teachers were too stressed to communicate this to the kids.
Yeah.
So Selena's right. Now in Arizona, a large majority of them, the devices are in their hands at home. And they've got hotspots. And so this year, I think that would be less of a problem. And I know that Maria just said about Tennessee. Yeah, I don't know if schools are going to allow kids to travel to a big events. And so we are tentatively planning as well. We're doing our Econ Challenge online for sure. We're tentatively planning the Personal Finance Challenge. But I don't think that the comfort level with Zoom will be a problem for teachers. And
Right.
the technology will not be as much as a problem either.
Right.
And
Eric, do you have anything to add or questions?
Yeah, I wanted to add because I think we're going to go virtual as well. I was just kind of looking up drive time. You know, you could drive. We've had teams that have had 7-hour drive to our finals before.
Wow.
From up in the Upper Peninsula. So in Michigan, you know, you could be driving for a while. And so there was a lot of advantages to doing the virtual. It was a quick turnaround. That was hard, and the devices and things like that were a challenge for some. Our perennial champions in Chelsea, Michigan, who have won the National Personal Finance Challenge before, that team of students were in their cars in the school parking lot so that they could get Wi-Fi.
Wow.
I watched that. Yeah.
So they were in their cars, and this was like the height of COVID. Everybody thought, you'd die if you touched somebody else. And so they're in their separate cars in the parking lot together. And, you kind of figure it out as they're doing the competition. It was really interesting. But I wanted to, I guess, give, you look at what Arizona did, and it just hurts my mind to think about all that. It's so big, and I'm so proud of them for what they did, and it's amazing. But they keep, they've got an army of people. I'm an army of one in Michigan. Okay. I am the Michigan Council. I don't have any other employees. So I had me, and I had my treasurer on my board that worked with the Excel document, just doing the data analysis from the results of each round of quiz to update who was in first place and things like that. So, you could do it with, a bare bones army of one or two as well. So, you can go the whole spectrum here. I use Schoology for my testing. So I did 3 rounds of testing. I didn't use breakout rooms at all. I had the kids join all together in a Zoom room. And then I said, okay, your test begins now. And I had the test in Schoology from a question bank. So everybody got different tests. And so it made the cheating a little bit more difficult. So we could try to get some valid results, and they were timed, and everything worked really well with that technology. Now Schoology doesn't allow kind of new basic accounts, and the test quiz feature is kind of disabled right now. So a little bit of what we did would have to be reinvented somewhere else, or you'd have to have a paid version of Schoology, or maybe they'll open it back up at some point this year. But right now they want to devote their resources, good economics example for those of you who want to use it. They want to devote their resources to their paid accounts and supporting what they've already got. So, so I've got some instructions in the document that I shared with Schoology, but I would encourage you to watch the Facebook Live, and see how we used the Buzz-in Live. And that technology worked really well. That's something that you definitely got to practice and play with, so that the settings, like whether the kids are going to be hearing the sound of the buzzer, or only you're hearing the sound of the buzzer. Again, some of those little details, so get your for me, I'd get my kids out, and say, okay, you guys get out your phones, go to this link. Are you hearing what I'm, playing on Facebook Live, or whatever else it happens to be that I was doing? So you definitely have to kind of play with some of the settings a bit to make sure that you've got it how you want it. But the Buzz-in Live worked very, very well. The kids, and I had the kids also, just like Chris was asking about how they name themselves in Zoom. I think it's important that they name themselves similarly in Buzz-in Live, so that you can know who, what team to call on. It really was a lot easier than I thought it would be. because you've got all those Quiz Bowl rules, right? And like these kids like live and breathe this stuff. So they're like, going to be on top of you if you violate a Quiz Bowl rule. And so, I thought it was fairly easy for me to manage reading the questions and also managing the Buzz in Live stuff. And actually what I thought was, because I had during one of my competitions, I had my treasurer during the Econ Challenge read questions, and then I controlled other things. And I kind of thought it was better for me to do it all together, because otherwise the delays of timing and other things like that were going to be an issue. So we were going to do it that way, and we ended up just having me do it because we tested it out and there was just a little bit of a delay. And I didn't want, when somebody buzzes in early, for the question to still be being read. You got to stop reading the question right when that buzz-in happens. And that was a little bit of an issue. So it's some of those little things that, you just want to make sure of before you do something like this and, put it out there, obviously. But, there's a good amount of help now in the network to help you through it. And I think that not even just the Econ Challenge and the Personal Finance Challenge, but it's like, okay, what other ways can I use Buzz in Live to create an interactive, experience in my classroom? And, I think it opens up your eyes to some of the possibilities of what you can do. So thank you.
Yeah, I think
everybody.
I think that's a really good point. And Debbie Henney is in our meeting, and she was our host for the Buzz in Live, and she really was, instrumental in helping us figure that part out. So I don't know if you want to add anything on that, Debbie, but you were I think you managed the questions and the points, and that, like Derek was saying, was it easier to have one person do all that management, or do you remember? I feel like that was so long ago.
Being grateful for the help, and I think one of our challenges, and I don't remember how we figured it out, was making sure that they could hear the buzz, that I could hear. And I think that was just early on, learning how to share your computer sound, but definitely having some buzz and having a visual so they could see who buzzed in. But having people in the background, I don't know how you did it, Derek, because I just followed instructions and somehow it amazingly worked. But it actually felt fun and exciting.
Chris asked a question about Debbie that was there a way to set it where they couldn't buzz until you finish? And I think the answer for that is no. If they buzzed in, we didn't finish the sentence. They had to answer it without Debbie finishing the sentence. We made that really clear to them. Like, I don't know what game shows do that, but that if you buzz in before we finished, then you're taking a shot at the answer, right, Debbie?
Right. And to Derek's point, I'll second the fact that having their names identify which team they're on was crucial, because it was hard. I didn't have the visual of being live and knowing which team they were on. Now, I do think Zoom has in their newest update, you have the ability to drag their pictures, to like certain areas.
Customize your gallery.
Useful. Yeah, because I could have drugged them so I could see like, oh, that kid is on that team and that kid is on that team. But when they were at home, I relied on having them named a certain way.
That's a great point, because you can customize your gallery. And if you're the host, you can customize the gallery and set that for everybody else's gallery view. And so that's kind of a cool tool. One thing I just wondering what everybody else thinks is that, that those of you, I'm feeling really lucky to have a staff of 5. I didn't realize there were so many one-person staff, due to this. But I mean, I wouldn't speak for anybody else, but maybe we could come in and help in some ways, because it's remote, that I could certainly be a co-host in Derek's, room and help if you don't have a larger staff. So
I was thinking that same thing, Kathy. I was like, we have enough people here that could help.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I know Jen Mazzillo sat down with me and, talked me through everything and was patient as I said, well, what if this and what if that, so I know that we would all be happy to help out and be part of your day if that's needed.
It was so funny because it was exhausting. And when Selena was done, she called me or I called, and I'm like, oh, we could be together and have a glass of wine or something.
Yeah. I was so tired. I was more tired than if I had been physically in the room, running all around with everybody. It was very emotionally draining. One other thing about Buzz in Live, I guess I'm just going to be the one that talks about the problems because they're still fresh in my brain. The challenge with Buzz in Live, if you've never used it before, is after each time you have to clear it. Mm-hmm. So you read the question, they buzz in, it shows you a list of the order in which they buzzed in, and then you have to hit the clear button before you read the question again, the next question. And when you are the only one doing like all the pieces, if you go back and watch, and like Derek said, you could go back to any of our Facebook pages and find the videos from our Facebook Live. But the kids got to where they would tell me every time, clear the buzzer, you know, and I was like, thank you. I don't mind you telling me that at all, you know.
Yeah, you had to get a rhythm. Like I had a rhythm and then I'd be okay. And then something would happen to that rhythm and I'd forget to clear it. You guys have any other questions? Because I think our time's up. All right, well, feel free to grab that document. I think that Selena might add some stuff to it, but